It started the same way every day had for the last 2 years, with silence that seemed to echo louder than any sound. The driveway was empty again, the flag on the porch barely moving in the morning wind, and the house sat still as if time itself refused to pass. But then, the camera caught a single frame of movement. Just a curtain shifting, a mother glancing out with the faintest hope that maybe today would be different. You ever wonder what it's like to wait for someone who might never come home? That quiet ache that fills your chest when every phone ring feels like fate deciding your future. This story, the one you're about to feel, not just watch, began on one of those mornings. Ordinary. Unremarkable. The kind that hides miracles behind routine. For 2 years, Maria kept her son's room untouched. His boots still by the bed. His medals collecting dust on the shelf. His scent, fading from the jacket she couldn't stop touching. She told herself she was fine, that mothers learn to live with absence, but the truth is, absence isn't something you live with. It's something that quietly eats away at you until hope becomes a kind of madness. Outside, the neighbors' kids played in the street, their laughter a cruel reminder of a world that kept turning. She tried to smile. Tried to be grateful. But every sound reminded her of what wasn't there, his voice calling, "Mom, I'm home." She'd replay that line in her mind 1,000 times. The door opening. The sound of his boots. The warmth of his hug. But imagination never gets the details right. It fades, like an old photograph. That morning, she made coffee she didn't want and turned on the TV just for the noise. The announcer's voice faded into static as she stared at the small wooden box by the window, the one with the letters he'd sent. She'd read them so often the paper had softened, words almost erased by tears. "Don't worry about me, Mom. I'll be home before you know it." But she did worry. She always did. Because the last letter had come 8 months ago. And after that, nothing. People told her to move on. "He's strong," they said. "He'll come back." But hope, when stretched too thin, begins to sound like denial. The wind outside picked up. A chime clinked softly. Maria closed her eyes, listening, pretending it was him calling from the porch. For a moment, she let herself believe it. That illusion of sound. That heartbeat of hope. Then, the phone rang. Her heart jolted. She froze. The mug trembled in her hands, spilling coffee across the counter. It was probably nothing, another telemarketer, another false alarm, but her breath caught anyway. She picked up. "Mrs. Alvarez?" Her voice barely found shape. "Yes. This is Staff Sergeant Collins, ma'am. I'm calling to confirm." She couldn't breathe. The words blurred. "Confirm what? Another letter? A visit? Or the one call no mother ever wants to receive?" But the sergeant's tone shifted, softer now, careful. "Ma'am, your son, he's coming home." She didn't understand at first. It felt like a sentence without meaning, like a sound underwater. "Coming home." "Yes, ma'am. He landed this morning. He'll be in town by evening." The world stopped. Her hand went limp. The phone slid against her ear. She didn't even hear the rest. Just that one phrase, "coming home." The air around her thickened with disbelief. She turned toward the window, half expecting him to already be there, standing in that driveway where he used to park his truck. But there was only sunlight and dust. Her knees weakened. She gripped the counter to steady herself. Tears came without warning, hot, shaking, unstoppable. For months she'd begged for this moment in prayers that felt like whispers into the void. Now it was real, and her body didn't know how to handle it. Her son, Corporal Daniel Alvarez, was coming home. The world blurred. Time stretched. Every second felt suspended between disbelief and joy. But somewhere, deep inside that joy, lived a flicker of fear. What if he wasn't the same? What if time had changed him, the war had taken pieces of him she'd never get back? She looked around the room. The family photos. His laughter frozen in still frames. She whispered to herself, as if saying it might make it real. "He's coming home." Then, softer. "He's coming home." But outside, the driveway remained empty, for now. And as the camera lingered on that still frame, a mother standing in quiet disbelief, the sunlight painting gold across her face. One question hung in the air. When love waits too long, does it recognize what finally returns? Airports are strange places for soldiers. They're too bright, too peaceful. Too full of people hurrying somewhere that isn't dangerous. Daniel stood by the window, his duffel bag at his feet, watching planes take off one after another, each one vanishing into the same sky he'd stared at through desert dust for years. Coming home should have felt like freedom. But instead, it felt like walking through a dream he wasn't sure he'd wake from. He traced the edges of his ticket with calloused fingers. Home. A word that used to mean comfort now carried weight, like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. What would he say to her? What do you say to someone who's been counting every sunrise you've survived? He thought about the day he left. His mother holding back tears, pretending to be strong. He'd smiled, said the words every son says, "I'll be fine, Mom." But fine didn't survive out there. In the silence of deployment, between the chaos and the waiting, he'd replayed her voice like a lullaby, the one soft sound that reminded him he was still human. But now that he was coming home, that same sound terrified him. He didn't want her to see what the war had done, the 1,000-yard stare, the invisible scars, the quiet fear that home might not feel like home anymore. The loudspeaker crackled. Flight 237, now boarding. He slung the duffel over his shoulder, his boots heavy against the tile floor. Every step felt like walking through time itself. Around him, people laughed, hugged, scrolled their phones, unaware that for him, this wasn't a trip. It was resurrection. When the plane lifted off, Daniel closed his eyes. The engines roared, and memories flooded in, sandstorms, letters unread, faces of friends who didn't make it back. Maybe she wouldn't. Maybe he wouldn't recognize himself either. He took a deep breath. The hum of the plane became a lullaby. Outside, the world was soft again, clouds painted gold by the sun, nothing like the sharp horizon he'd grown used to. As he landed, he checked his reflection in the window. Same eyes, but older. Same smile, but forced. He looked like a ghost wearing a uniform. When the cab pulled onto the highway toward home, the world looked both familiar and foreign, like a dream replaying in slightly wrong colors. He saw the diner where he'd had breakfast with his mom before leaving. Still there. The gas station, the rusted billboard, the old church on the hill, unchanged. But everything felt different. Because he was. He stared at the photo tucked in his wallet, his mother and him on the porch years ago, sunlight on their faces. He whispered quietly. Almost home, Mom. But under his breath, another thought. Will you still know me? The car turned down the final road. The sign for Maple Street came into view, and his pulse quickened. His palms were sweating. He hadn't felt fear like this in years, not even in the desert. As the driver slowed, Daniel's eyes found the old mailbox. The chipped paint. The small garden she still kept. The house. Home. He took a deep breath. But before stepping out, he hesitated. His body froze. Because standing there, at the end of the driveway, was a woman holding a mug, staring down the road. His mother. The driver asked softly, "You okay, soldier?" He nodded once. "Yeah. Just, give me a second." He sat there for a moment longer, watching her from inside the cab. 2 years had changed her, her posture smaller, her face thinner, the silver in her hair catching sunlight like frost. But it was her. The one reason he made it home. He paid the driver, stepped out, and stood still. The sound of the car door closing echoed down the quiet street. Every memory returned at once, his 10th birthday when she baked a cake that collapsed in the middle, his high school graduation photo on the porch, the way she used to wave from that same driveway every morning before school. And now, that same woman stood there, hesitant, squinting into the light. Daniel adjusted his uniform. The fabric felt stiff, foreign. He wasn't used to being seen anymore, not like this. She turned, her eyes catching movement. For a second, her face filled with confusion. He saw her lips part slightly, but no sound came. He took one step forward. Her hand trembled. The mug in her grip wobbled. Her mind, no doubt, racing through impossible possibilities. Then, her eyes widened, recognition flickering like a spark. But before she could speak, Daniel froze. Because it wasn't the reunion he'd imagined. It was shock. Just the sound of ceramic breaking and the faint whistle of wind. Finally, she whispered, a fragile voice breaking through disbelief. Daniel. He nodded once, eyes glistening. And then, everything that had been frozen for 2 years came undone. Her breath caught. Her knees weakened. Her hands covered her mouth as if to contain the cry that tore from her chest. He caught her before she fell, wrapping his arms around her, holding her like he had held his rifle, steady, desperate, and trembling. Time stopped. The world disappeared. There was only them. Tears mixed with sunlight. Silence turned into sobs. The kind that carried years of words unsaid. For the first time in forever, Daniel felt something break open inside him, something tender, something human. She pulled back, her hands on his face, studying every line. Her fingers brushed over scars he didn't remember getting. I thought, she began, but couldn't finish. He smiled faintly. I know. And for the first time, her tears turned into laughter, small, shaky, but real. The camera lingered as she held him, whispering his name again and again, as if saying it might make up for all the days she couldn't. Behind them, the house stood silent, watching. Inside, the air waited. Because this was only the beginning. The moment the world held its breath before love fully returned. The front door creaked like it remembered him. Every inch of that house was a museum of memories, untouched, but alive. The same photos lined the hallway, though the colors had faded. The same ticking clock filled the silence, steady as a heartbeat that refused to stop. Daniel paused on the threshold, boots still at the door. He dreamed of this moment through countless nights, coming home, crossing that line between war and peace. But now, standing here, it didn't feel like peace. It felt like trespassing into a life that had moved on without him. His mother moved ahead slowly, as if afraid he might disappear if she blinked. "You're home," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief more than joy. He smiled softly. "Yeah. I guess I am." On the wall, a calendar still hung, a faded photo of a sunrise. The date was months behind. She hadn't changed it. Maybe she couldn't. In the kitchen, everything was the same, except emptier. One coffee cup on the table. One chair pulled out. One jacket draped over another. His jacket. He reached for it, running his fingers along the fabric. The faint smell of dust and old detergent filled his lungs, the scent of waiting. "Your room's the same," his mother said quietly. "I couldn't bring myself to touch anything." He nodded. But when he stepped inside, it was like walking into a ghost version of himself, posters of things he no longer cared about, books he never finished, medals that once meant pride now felt like weight. He sat on the bed, the springs creaking under his uniform. The sound made his chest tighten. His mother stood by the door, hands clasped together. "You look so different," she said, tears threatening again. "But your eyes, they're still my boys." He didn't know how to answer. Because even he wasn't sure they were. For a while, neither spoke. Just the soft hum of, "Finally," she said, "there's someone who's been waiting to see you." Daniel looked up. "Who?" She smiled faintly through tears. "Emma." His heart froze. "She's here. She comes by every weekend. Said she'd never stop visiting." Daniel felt a rush of warmth and fear at the same time. His daughter. The little girl who had last hugged him at the airport 2 years ago, clutching a stuffed bear and promising not to cry. He hadn't heard her voice since. "Does she know I'm home?" he asked. His mother shook her head softly. "Not yet. I thought you should tell her yourself." Daniel swallowed hard. His throat tightened. He stood up, glancing toward the window. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted the sky gold, the same light as the day he left. "Then let's tell her," he said quietly. The knock on the door came softly, 3 gentle taps. His mother opened it, and there she was. Emma. Her hair was longer now, a few curls brushing her shoulders. She held that same old teddy bear by its paw, the one Daniel had given her before he deployed. She looked up, smiling shyly. Grandma. Yes, sweetheart, his mother said softly. Someone's here to see you. Emma tilted her head, curious. Then her gaze drifted past her grandmother, toward the men standing quietly in the corner of the living room. Daniel didn't move. Couldn't. His whole body felt like it was holding its breath. Her small eyes scanned him, the uniform, the worn boots, the faint scars on his face. She frowned slightly, trying to place him in her memory. And then, she saw it. The way his hand trembled like her father's used to when he brushed her hair. The small scar near his eyebrow. The way he looked at her, that same soft awe. Her lips parted. The teddy bear slipped from her fingers. Daddy, she whispered. Daniel blinked hard. His knees almost gave out. He opened his arms, but said nothing. Words would have broken the moment. She ran. The sound of her small footsteps echoed through the house, faster, louder, desperate. She collided into him with all the strength a child's heart could give. He caught her mid-run, lifting her off the ground, holding her like she was both fragile and infinite. Tears streamed freely down both their faces. She pressed her tiny hands against his cheeks. You came back, she cried. He nodded, his voice breaking. I promised, didn't I? Behind them, his mother stood silently, a hand over her mouth, tears flowing again. Emma laughed through her sobs. I told my friends my daddy's a hero. They said heroes don't come back, but you did. Daniel felt something shatter inside him, that wall he'd built in the desert, that numbness that kept him alive. It was gone. He kissed her forehead, whispering, I had to come back. You were waiting. For a long moment, time didn't exist. Just the sound of her laughter and the faint ticking of the clock, the one that had waited, too. But as joy flooded in, so did something darker. Because beneath the happiness, a storm brewed, the memories, the guilt, the faces of those who didn't get their reunion. He smiled for her sake, but his eyes carried the war. Night fell softly over the house. The air smelled of rain. Emma had fallen asleep on the couch, her teddy bear in her arms, her head resting against his shoulder. His mother watched from the kitchen, her heart full, but her eyes wary. She saw what he was hiding, the stiffness in his posture, the haunted silence between breaths. When she finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. You're home now, Daniel. You can rest. He looked at her, eyes hollow but kind. I don't think I know how anymore. She walked closer, kneeling in front of him like she used to when he scraped his knees as a boy. Then we'll learn again. Together. He tried to smile, but it didn't last. Thunder rolled in the distance. For a second, the flash of lightning through the window made him flinch. His body tensed, a reflex he couldn't stop. His mother noticed. Her hand reached for his, grounding him back to now. You don't have to be strong here, she said gently. You already were, long enough. Daniel's voice cracked. Out there. I couldn't afford to feel. Because if I did, I wouldn't make it back. Tears welled in his eyes. But now that I'm here, I can't stop feeling. The storm passed by dawn, leaving the house soaked in silver light. Daniel stood by the window, his reflection faint against the glass. Outside, the world looked clean again, washed free of yesterday. But inside, the weight still lingered. On the table sat an envelope. Yellowed, creased, edges curled. His mother had placed it there earlier, her voice soft but firm. It came a few months after you left. You should read it. He hesitated before touching it, as if the paper might burn him. His name was written in a child's uneven scrawl, for Daddy, when he comes home. His breath caught. He opened it slowly. Inside was a short letter, written in pink crayon. Dear Daddy. Mommy says you're far away but still love me. I'm being brave like you said. I still sleep with the bear. I talk to it like it's you. I hope you're not scared. I'm waiting. Love, Emma. The words blurred as tears filled his eyes. He folded it carefully, his fingers trembling. His mother spoke from behind him. She wrote that after she heard about the convoy attack. They said you were missing for weeks. I didn't know how to tell her, dear Emma. You once told me you were being brave like Daddy. But the truth is, Daddy learned to be brave because of you. Every night, when it got too hard to breathe, I closed my eyes and remembered your laugh. That's what brought me home. Not orders, not luck, you." He paused, tears falling onto the page, smudging the ink. "You said you talked to your bear like it was me. I hope it listened. Because I did too, to your prayers, your hope, your love. I'm sorry for every day I wasn't there to tuck you in. But I'm here now, and I'll never stop being your dad. Love, Daddy." He folded the letter gently, setting it beside hers, past and present finally side by side. The next morning, the world woke slowly. The house smelled of coffee and rain. Emma sat at the kitchen table, swinging her feet, while Daniel cooked pancakes, something he hadn't done since before the deployment. The sound of the pan sizzling, the soft laughter between them, it felt like healing had a sound, and it was this. "Extra chocolate chips?" she asked, grinning. "Always," he smiled. His mother watched quietly from the corner, her heart full. As they ate, sunlight poured through the curtains, painting them gold. Emma was telling him about school, about how she'd won a spelling bee, about her friend who wanted to be a hero like her dad. Daniel listened, truly listened, his eyes soft with pride. But beneath the smiles, a quiet truth lingered. He knew he couldn't stay forever. The army had its clock, and it was still ticking. When Emma ran off to play, his mother finally said it aloud. "You're going back, aren't you?" He didn't answer at first. Then he nodded slowly. "I have to. There are men still out there, my brothers." Her eyes shimmered with both pride and pain. "You just got home." "I know," he said softly. "But they need me." She took a deep breath, holding his hand. "Then promise me this time you'll come back for yourself, not just for duty." He looked toward Emma's laughter echoing down the hall. "I promise." That night, as he tucked his daughter in, she blinked sleepily. "Daddy, when you go again, will it be long?" He hesitated. "Not too long, baby." Weeks passed. The world outside moved on, but inside that home, every moment was stretched thin, precious and fragile. The day of departure came quietly, without fanfare or speeches. Just the sound of boots on the floor and hearts learning to let go again. Daniel stood by the truck, uniform crisp, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Emma clung to him, small arms tight around his waist. "You said not too long," she murmured. He knelt down, brushing a tear from her cheek. "And I meant it." She held up her teddy bear. "Take him with you. So you don't forget me." Daniel froze. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "He's brave, like you." He took the bear carefully, pressing it to his chest. "Then he'll keep me safe." His mother stood behind them, trying to be strong, her eyes betraying her heart. "Be careful, my son." He hugged her, holding on longer than words allowed. Before leaving, he turned one last time, the house behind him glowing in the morning sun. The same door. Months passed. Seasons changed. The tree outside their house shed its leaves, then bloomed again, the silent witness of time's rhythm. Letters came often. Each one filled with stories, not of war, but of life. Daniel wrote about the stars over the camp, the laughter of his team, and how he still talked to the teddy bear before sleeping. Emma would write back, telling him about her school plays, her birthdays, her dreams. Each word was a thread weaving them back together. Then one morning, the familiar sound of a truck engine filled the street. Emma looked up from her cereal bowl, eyes wide. "Mommy." Her mother smiled, tears glistening. "Go see for yourself." The door swung open, and there he was again. Same uniform. Same tired smile. But this time, no hesitation, no distance. Just peace. Emma ran, leaping into his arms, laughing and crying at once. "You came back again." He held her close, whispering, "I always will." His mother watched from the doorway, her hands over her heart. The light hit them just right, golden, gentle, endless. This time.